Hey guys, today's video is all about creating layered flowers using the Secret Garden die cuts from Stampin' Up. I am going to be joining some of the creative design team members to show you different ways to use these. Hi, I'm Katie Taylor at scrappinkaty.com, where I show you how to preserve your family's memories through the art of scrapbooking. Here are the things that I've pulled out to use for this layout. Of course, my photos, and this is from our afternoon tea in Victoria at the Empress. So I've gone ahead and I've printed some enlargements as well as some 3x4s and gone ahead and matted them on some white photo mats. Now I prefer my photo mats true to size, so 4x6, 5x7, 3x4, and then I just trim my photos down slightly so you can see that slight white edge. As far as the papers, one of my favorite things to do is mix paper collections and patterns, and so that's what I'm going to be doing here. I wanted the photos to stay the focal point. There are a lot of colors going on, so my colors on my papers are going to be subdued. I've pulled out the country lace, and I'm thinking something between these two. I think that they lend themselves to the subdued colors, but the patterns aren't so busy that it's going to take away from the photos. You can see here, it's just got a lot of pattern to it. And then I'm going to be using the Secret Garden flowers, so I want my papers to kind of be in the background. So I've got those from the country lace. I'm also pulling out a couple of patterns from Nature's Sweetness. If you have not ordered this, I absolutely love it. I'm kind of late to the game. Some of the other girls have used it over and over again, but you can see one side has kind of a gold finish to it and then the back side doesn't. So I thought that these would be really pretty for some of the florals. So I'm going to be using that. And mainly the touch of gold because there is gold in the china that we had our tea and our little tea cakes and all the little finger sandwiches and all of that on. I've also pulled the gold mercury vellum. Y'all have seen me use this. Or actually, y'all might not have. I think that was a creative design team class that I did. So that's not a public video, but it is wonderful. I love it. It's vellum, but because it has so much gold on it, it's really easy to adhere to things. You know, a lot of times vellum, you have to be careful where you put the adhesive. And then there is this pattern from the Secret Garden cardstock. I just love, again, the subdued color. It's the periwinkle, which goes really well. You can see right here, there's almost a periwinkle color in the plate. And so I'm going to be using that. Now, Secret Garden, there's a lot to it. Like I said, I'm using the Secret Garden thin cuts or die cuts, and that's what a lot of us are using as well. But there's just so much floral. And like I said, I really wanted to use the die cuts. So I didn't want the die cuts plus this pattern paper, but it's pretty. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty. It's just not for this layout. And here's some more of those colors of that cardstock. So one side you have the kind of argyle or diamond, and then the other side you have the random polka dots. I've already used some, so those aren't all the colors. You can see that. And then I have pulled, like I said, the Secret Garden die cut. That is really, it's gorgeous. Just wait till you see it. Now, all these Close to My Heart products actually are available for everyone to purchase as of today. So that's going to help a lot of you who maybe were not a Close to My Heart customer of mine before. I've also pulled the stamp set. Not really sure if I'm going to use this yet, but I pulled it anyway. Now, it has coordinating thin cuts, but that is not what I'm going to be using today. So make sure there's two different things. There's the stamp set and the die cuts. And then it's totally separate, a different vibe. Everything else are these die cuts. And these are the ones that I'm going to be using predominantly a lot of. But I have pulled this one. There's some background little stamps. This is for scrapbooking, so there's some titles in there I might use. And then I've also pulled some gold sequin ribbon. And then I've pulled some Wildberry little embellishments. We've got the dots, the glitter gems, and the little floral pieces, because I am using some Wildberry cardstock to match Andrea's shirt right here. So I'm going to clear all this off and then speed it up a little bit and we can get started. I'm going to do all my die cutting first. So I have the Wildberry cardstock as well as that Nature's Touch and that vellum. For the larger flower, I am going to be using the Wildberry cardstock, and I'm actually, because this is Wildberry and it came from close to my heart, it has the dark side or the true Wildberry and then also the light side. So I'm going to be cutting the larger and the smaller flower from the true color. So I'm just going to trim this off, and then I'm going to be using the light side for that middle flower. And I always like to cut 2 at a time, especially when I'm dealing with a layout that has a bunch of flowers. It just makes it a whole lot easier. So I'm going to run this through my die cut machine and then show you just the variations of the 2 colors, the true color and the light side, just how much it makes it pop. So there's the larger, and then that middle one is the lighter color, and then the smaller one is the true color as well. So you can see there just that variation of those 2 cardstocks. Now for the smaller flower, it's still pretty large, but I'm going to be using the vellum and the Nature's Touch, the gold. Now there are 2 really gold patterns. There's one that's kind of larger and then one that's smaller. So for this first one, because I do like to cut 2, I'm going to cut 1 of each of those, and then the other flowers, I'm going to cut 2 of each. So I've got that white with the gold kind of graph on it, and then the smaller flower is going to be 2 of the vellums. And I'm going to run that through my die cut machine, and then I'm going to take a look at which one I prefer. Again, mainly looking at that larger flower that had the 2 patterns on it. So I'm just going to separate these out. Again, you just poke the holes or poke a paper piercer through those holes, and then you just separate those 2 layers. So we've got that one, and then we've got this one. Now, this larger one is actually the kind of leaf pattern. It's a little bit more gold. I do have this one that I cut yesterday just to kind of see how a true white background would look. I'm not really sure about that one yet, so I'm going to set those aside and go ahead and cut my leaves. Now I am using Fern cardstock, again, a close to my heart color, so there's a dark side and a light side. I'm cutting 1 of each, and you can see here just the variation on the leaves. So I'm going to be cutting a lot of those leaves, and I've cut those off camera. Now for the country lace, this pattern had a wider gutter on the left and kind of a chopped off floral on the right. And then there's that periwinkle polka dot and then just a tiny strip of that vellum. So for the layout base on the right, I'm basically flipping it. So I have the country lace on the right with that gutter on the outside, the periwinkle along the bottom, and the gold vellum. That's really helpful if you're in a rut and not knowing what to do but need a 2-page layout. Just flip the layout. So we've got 2 5x7s on this left layout. We've got the Empress Hotel, and then we have one of our group photos. Just going to play around with the spacing right quick before I really adhere these down. I'm liking where that is. And then I have 2 3x4s. One is a photo of the menu, and then on 3D foam tape, there is a photo of the closed menu and then the plate. I really wanted to get the china in here simply because that's where I drew inspiration for the colors. As far as the right layout, I like to go ahead and adhere all my photos down and then come back and do embellishing. So that's what I'm doing here on this right layout. I'm going to go ahead and adhere these 2 top 3x4s. This is where our waiter and then Julie are showcasing the loose teas, and they just explain what they are and the strength of them. And then the bottom are the tea brewing or steeping, and then of course me sipping my tea. So now I'm going to start putting these flowers together. So of course we have the Wildberry, and I'm looking at this and I think it needs something. So I've pulled out my gold Spectrum Noir paint markers. I am taking the bullet tip and I'm just going to run this gold around all the edges of these Wildberry cardstock flowers. Now I do kind of play with this. I'm not going to do all of these on camera, but I did want to show you the look. Now, if I had my glass mat out, I probably would just run this along the edge and go off the page. It was a little quicker. I did do that off camera, but this larger flower just had a lot of little intricate cuts. The medium flower comes together a little bit faster, and then that smaller flower really comes together because there aren't a whole lot of intricate cuts. It's basically just like a circle. So I'm going to run that gold marker around that smaller flower, and then I can take a look at it, and I am really liking just those gold touches on that flower. Now, as far as the gold flowers, this is a little bit different. I'm thinking that they need a pop as well. So I've pulled out the Melon Mambo markers, the light and the dark. And I'm just going to run that marker along some of that scratch white paper and then kind of put that in between the two gold layers just to kind of see, number one, which one matches, and number two, if I really want to go that route. I decided not to do that, but I am going to actually create a layer with some thread. So I've just pulled some pink thread. It's not exactly that Wildberry color, but it's close enough. And I am just adding some thread jumbles, not only behind that white flower, but I'm also going to bring that jumble up over the top of that white flower. So now I'll have thread behind it and then on top of it that will separate those gold layers. Just going to make sure that looks good with the leaves, and I'm really liking that. So that is what I'm going to do. Again, just adding thread jumbles behind the white flower and then on top of, and then I'll come back in and I'll be able to adhere those layers down. I'm going to do the majority of this off camera. There's no need for you to watch, but I definitely wanted to show you how that was done. So we've got that done, and then I am going to go ahead and layer these together. Now I'm using dimensionals. I have one on that medium flower up at the top, and then I'm putting one on the smaller flower. So I'm going to peel off the backing, and then this medium flower has a cut, a slit that the smaller flower fits into. And then I'm adhering that down with the dimensional. And then I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to the bottom of this middle-sized flower. And then with that dimensional on top, when I adhere it down to this bottom layer or the larger Wildberry flower, it's really going to create dimension because I have some of that flower adhered directly to each other, all of those centers, and then I have the outside edges adhered with the dimensionals. Now I did leave one that did not have that larger Wildberry cardstock on the back. Now, as far as the gold flowers, basically the same thing, except I am only using dimensionals. So there's going to be some dimensionals between the small and the middle flower, and then the middle and the larger flower. And then those dimensionals are also going to make sure that that thread stays in place. Now, as far as assembling the flowers, I went ahead and took the leaves and I separated those with light and dark. And then I am adhering these flowers down with liquid adhesive. And then of course that Wildberry cardstock flower, I did not put adhesive around the edges. And that is going to allow me to tuck in these gold flowers as well as tuck in some of the leaves. So I'm just adding liquid adhesive to the gold flower, going to tuck that in down underneath that Wildberry cardstock, and then start filling in with the green leaves. Now there are 3 patterns, so to speak. I'm also making sure you'll see my piles over there. I've got light and dark, and that's going to create some variation in itself. I am adding some dimensionals to the very end of these leaves, much like I did the flowers. I usually like to do this because it just creates interest, and it also pops those leaves off of your card or off of your layout base. I do like to add just a dollop of liquid adhesive to the very end, and I have been trimming off these skinnier leaves. There's really just no need to have those long stems under there. So I trim them off and again add liquid adhesive. You really do not have to because the dimensionals are actually adhering those to your layout base, that liquid adhesive is not needed. I then realized that I should have added some gold paint marker to that little die cut flap, that we inserted that smaller flower into. So I'm just doing that on all of these floral pieces, and I really, really like how that turned out. I went ahead and took the smallest tip of these gold paint markers. They come in 3 tips, and I added just some dots of gold on those leaves. And so basically now everything in this floral cluster has some sort of gold on it. For our group photo, there was a chandelier. I hated to cover it. There was just so much space up there. So I did decide to do one of the flowers. And then I have my title on the right page. Now, I played with a couple of things. I actually created a title on my Cricut, but then I got really lazy after putting all of these flowers together. So the beautiful is from an older, close to my heart, paper collection. And then I've pulled out the stamp set for the Secret Garden. Remember I told you that I might be using that? Well, there is this little pennant or flag or label or whatever you want to call it, and it says memories. So I've pulled out some of the white labels. I forgot what they're called. I'll link them down below if they're still available. But I'm just inking up that memories in Harbor ink, and I'm going to trim it down a little bit, but I'm really liking how this turned out. It just added extra dimension. I will add some dimensionals to the back as well. So these are called the die cut white word strips. So it's just chipboard weight. I don't know if those are still available. Again, that was something that came over from close to my heart. Now the flower above Julie, I decided to use just the middle size and that smaller size, and then tuck in some of the greenery. That's going to not only not cover up her face, but it's going to just allow just a pop of pink. You'll see when you see both of the layouts together, it definitely creates that visual triangle. Now I did this cluster, most of it offline or off camera. And then of course I added one of the gold flowers up at the top right under my photo. But I did want to show you that I just trimmed one of those skinnier leaves apart and just started tucking some of the leaves here and there. It was just really easy to do. So don't be afraid to actually cut these apart or tear them apart. For my title, I did add 3D foam tape on the portions of the title that were not backed by the flowers, and that way it's all even. I am going to add that center dot or that little dot to my eye with liquid adhesive. It does stick to my finger here, but I figured it out. We're going to get that adhered down. And then I'm going to come back in with the memories. So remember, I stamped it on the chipboard or the paper board, and then I also added some dimensionals. And that's going to get nestled in right under beautiful, kind of overlap that F, and then also overlap that bottom right or that bottom left gold flower. I did come in and add some of that gold touch to all of the leaves. And then I also am going to do it. I added extra leaves to the left layout, so I went ahead and did that as well. So I'm going to move all of this away and then start looking at this layout. And remember, I have not only the gold sequin ribbon, but I also have these Wildberry flowers and then the dots and the glitter gems. So I did not end up using the gold sequin ribbon, but I ended up going to town, like just probably overdid the Wildberry flowers. But I felt like even though you had Andrea's shirt, even though you had the large cardstock flowers, I felt like the Wildberry still seemed like an afterthought. So by sprinkling in these small and large Wildberry flower embellishments, as well as the Wildberry glitter gems that I'm doing here, I felt like it really brought the layout and the colors of the layout together. I went ahead and added more doodle dots with that bullet point gold marker, and I really love how that looks as well. So here's a look at that layout. I love those layered flowers. You can see that gold touch on that Wildberry cardstock, as well as the doodle dots all around the clusters. Here is that left layout. I am going to add some journaling down at the bottom left, as well as the bottom left of that right layout as well. Here are some still shots of some of the details of this layout. You'll see there that I did add some extra gold dots to the center of those Wildberry flowers. And then don't forget to expand that description so you'll see all the shopping links as well as all of my friends who are playing along documenting this memory. We also have Julie, who she has already scrapbooked her tea, and I will link her video down below as well as Chelsea's, who is posting over on Instagram. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your week.